Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. This evening, I'm going to be doing something a little different because I just want to talk to you. There's a lot to be said about paid sponsorships, paid advertisements in the YouTube crypto space. And, I got into a discussion at Decentral Miami with Ben Armstrong of BitBoy Crypto, who, let's start here. So basically, I want to open a dialogue for all of you out there, all of you who watch this channel, any of you who are catching this video for one reason or another. And I'm going to ask you some simple questions, and I'd really appreciate your answers in the comments below. And there are a lot of it seems to be a lot of a mixed message as it relates to paid sponsorships in the cryptocurrency space. Some of you think that it's terrible and that it's wrong. Some of you have no problem with it. Some of you think that if somebody on YouTube promotes a program or an application or a project of some kind and we're paid to do so, if that project ends up becoming some sort of scam or it fails or something, that it's somehow the influencer's fault or the educator's fault or the YouTuber's fault or celebrity's fault or whatever for basically telling you about it. Now, I'm going to basically, it's easier to do this in a discussion back and back form, but I'm going to try and do this as just me talking. There are definitely two sides to this coin, and I want to paint a picture for you. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with paid segments or paid promotions for crypto in the YouTube space, and I want to explain why. Years ago, I was approached by a friend who was ultimately looking to promote vape juice for the vape pens and things like that. This was years ago. This was before vaping was like a huge thing. Okay. And the products he had weren't even that, there was no nicotine in them. Okay. They were just flavored vape. But because of the keywords associated with that industry, you could not buy advertising anywhere. You couldn't buy advertising on Google. You couldn't buy advertising on Facebook or anywhere. Everywhere we looked, because I was trying to set up pay-per-click campaigns to help his business. And you just couldn't. So how do you promote something like that? How do you promote a market or an industry that, for whatever reason, is blocked from being advertised for whatever the reason? Maybe it's a competitor to other more major advertisers, or maybe there are, I don't know, there could be any number of reasons associated with that. In the cryptocurrency space, we have a very similar situation, but for different reasons. If you look at any of my YouTube videos, you see versions of me, impersonators, basically telling you, come chat with me on WhatsApp so that they can suck up your phone number. Or they're on Instagram sending messages to everyone that is like involved or likes or follows my page, or on Facebook or on Twitter. Everywhere I go, we are, influencers, educators, people of us in the public eye have others out there who are fraudulent, who are trying to scam you, who are trying to do you no good, and they're using our names and likeness to get your trust, right? And similar things happen in advertising, where you will have a legitimate project like MetaMask, right? And then you have advertisers out there who would go and buy pay-per-click ads for MetaMask. And when you click that link, oh, lo and behold, it's a fake link that takes you to another cloned site of MetaMask and gets you to download some sort of malware. There are bad actors in every space, but it's impossible to know who all these bad actors are, especially at the front of everything, right? And because of a lot of that activity, all cryptocurrency advertising was banned from basically Facebook. I'm not sure if you can advertise stuff like that on Twitter or not. You can't do pay-per-click ads or anything like that in the crypto space on Google. So there are very limited outlets for promoting even legitimate projects in the crypto space, which ultimately leaves educators, influencers, and that sort of thing on social media, basically going directly through the content. And I do believe that there is some responsibility for some of us who are promoting things with paid segments and the like to try to vet some of these projects as best we can with the limited exposure we can get to all of these projects, because ultimately we're only able to really get the kind of information that is presented to us by these project owners. Sometimes the information that is relayed to us may very well be different than what is readily available at launch, or whether it's a white paper or a light paper or some sort of book of statistics or information related to the project or the technology associated with it or how it's going to work and function and operate. Sometimes we've seen that an influencer or an educator will talk about a particular project, explain the technology, and then on launch day or shortly thereafter, things change on a dime. So now that educator is basically telling people to go check out something that has changed dramatically under the radar without even that individual's knowledge. We've seen multiple projects, time and time again, projects that even through heavy vetting, things like Celsius Network. I mean, there's so many, but Celsius is the most recent. FTX obviously being one. I was never paid or never really even talked about FTX forever, ever. To my knowledge, I don't think I ever, even as hey, check out FTX for no reason at all. I was never a big supporter of FTX regardless. But, Solana is another one. How many influencers have been paid to promote projects associated with Solana or layer 2 applications or DeFi applications or NFTs or whatever on that blockchain? Where are they now? Is everyone that's promoted any one of these projects at fault for being paid to expose you to something that exists in the space? And my answer is ultimately no, not really, because it's all a form of advertisement. And to me, it's not much different than, a magazine, Time magazine or a People magazine being promoted to buy advertising to promote some new cookie brand that may have something in it that nobody knew was bad for you until years later. Is the magazine at fault? Should they have known? How psychic is everyone expected to be on our end as people who are putting out content and then trying to generate a living from that content through paid segments? I know that there's a lot of hoopla associated with like Ben and BitBoy and, talking about some project named PAMP. I never even knew anything about it. I had never heard anything about that project. Apparently it was a huge debacle, a huge scam. And Ben apparently was paid to talk about that project, and it went south. And I feel like since a lot of that has happened, Ben has basically taken it upon himself to make it, to basically say it's evil, it's bad to do paid promotion, it's bad to do paid segments. And even at the Decentral conference, I said I flat out disagree, and here's why. I'm building a project right now. You can see it on my window. Soblocks.com. It's a social media platform that we're building on the Cardano blockchain. Now, am I going to be able to buy advertising on different mediums like TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, or what have you to promote this social media platform because of its relation to Cardano or blockchain or cryptocurrency overall? I don't know yet, but I'm doubting I will. And if I'm not, what's my outlet to promote this project? There's going to be a token associated with it, a utility token specifically, because you kind of have to have one to run a platform on a blockchain. And I'm pretty sure we're going to end up having to have some sort of side chain to limit the transaction fees on the blockchain for engagement because of the way we are building the business model of not even just the business model, but the functionality model of Soblocks. So Am I let's say I am promoting it. Or let's say I pay another influencer $1,000 to talk about it and to set up a profile, and something happens. And you know, there's no other means of promoting that platform. There's nothing really, there's not many options to promote a blockchain-based platform, as legitimate as it may be. If I am paying someone to promote that platform and something happens to it, if it gets severely hacked, if, you know, I don't know, if anything were to happen, A, does that then automatically make Soblox a scam? And B, does it make anybody that was paid to promote it or expose you to it a scammer? And where is the line drawn? Now let's flip the script for a minute. Let's say I had a really ulterior motive to building Soblox. I wanted to take over the world, and I want every user to be siphoned for all their money at 12:01 a.m. Someday, right? And I don't tell anybody that. And I don't tell anybody that that's built into an algorithm or built into a code or, I don't know, whatever the case may be. Nobody knows. But I'm sending out my deck and I'm telling everybody, this is the technology. Look how great it's going to be. This is what we're trying to do to change the world. We have great motives and everything's great. We just want to pay you to tell everyone about it. And then it happens. That 12:01 time pops up. Boom, everyone finds out Soblox was a scam. It's not. But I'm just saying hypothetically, using myself as an example, does that make everyone that I paid to promote it a scam? What should they have known? Should they have known that that was a potential thing to happen at someday in the future at 12:01 a.m.? How much are educators and influencers expected to know and be responsible for projects they are paid to expose the world to? And as opposed to how much responsibility of the actual creators and the developers. The thing of it is that the crypto space is such a wild west. And you know, I feel like there's also a big difference between influencers who are paid to do segments, who disclose these paid segments, and those who don't. That is a big, big deal to me, and always has been. Since the day I started doing paid segments on YouTube, I've always disclosed every bit. Every single one of them. You're not going to find any program or any application or any project out there that has paid me to do a promotion of any kind that it wasn't disclosed, typically within the video itself, as well as the description. But I've learned it's good enough to just have it in the description. And a lot of companies, they hate it when you're like, oh, this is paid. And I used to tell everybody everything all the time. I've gotten a little better and reined it in. To me, there has always been kind of a moral and ethical responsibility to disclose paid advertisements, right? Because even if you look at a magazine, I could be reading a magazine about cats, and maybe there's a full page photo of a cat and a bag of food. And I know that's a paid advertisement. It doesn't, but in crypto, you can blur those lines very easily. And many do, especially those that are outside of the US, where things like that aren't very well, if at all, regulated. So I'm always weary of influencers or those outside of the United States, because I know they don't have the same guidelines or requirements. I've been disclosing stuff since day one, before I even knew it was a thing, just because I've always tried to be very straight up. And I always try to just basically say, hey, they paid me to talk about this. And if you've been with me for any length of time, you know it is not unlikely that I will get paid to do a promotion for something. And generally, I'll be paid for a promotion before I've even seen anything about it, because I have people that are taking these emails and they're looking through the project, and then they're just doing these deals and sending them to me. And then it's up to me to decide whether or not it's a favorable review. And so often have I done paid segments where I'm like, I don't like this. I don't think this is good, or I think this is a crap show, or I think there's some, I would be weary. I'm very, very upfront about my paid segments. If I love a project, I'll tell you I love a project. But at the same time, that doesn't mean it's good. Nothing in crypto is good unless it's proven to be over time. And for me, I look at just about every project out there nowadays as a potential scam, a potential rug pull, a cash grab, a pump and dump. Basically everything and anything but a long-lasting, time-tested, proven worthy blockchain project until it's gone through at least one bear market and survived and has continued working and putting out updates and so forth and so on, and has come out of that bear market smelling like roses. That to me is a true like a test for any blockchain based project. Because the idea is that when a project launches, especially with ICOs, we don't see those much anymore, but with a lot of these projects, we see them. Ben even made this comment, and he's very right about this, where, the projects are basically paid up front to a large degree. If a few guys with a great idea put together a white paper and a website and maybe some sort of, demo or whatever, which more often than not, we don't even see that yet, or very early on in the seed stage. But then they get $10 million, $12 million, $50 million, $100 million just thrown at them overnight because their idea is so great. Well, ultimately, what is their motivation to build from there? What are the requirements associated with continuing all this work for a job you've ultimately already been paid for? And that is one issue in the crypto space where ideas, presentation, and speculation can often drum up tens of millions of dollars in capital for people that have never really done much of anything in their lives. Right? I mean, we've seen that. I've seen examples of this multiple times where, somebody with a history of failed projects over and over and over. And then they're getting $100 million or $50 million. And for what? They haven't done anything. And they already have a track record of failure. And, there's one thing to have a track record of little failures where you're learning and learning and learning. It's another thing where you're getting millions of dollars over and over and over, and you can't seem to make that work. That, to me, says somebody's not very interested in developing what they're set out to develop, right? So, I mean, overall, there are so many different nuances to paid advertisements in the blockchain space. And I don't... one of the points that I made at Decentral was, I discovered crypto through ICOs. I discovered crypto to some degree through paid segments and paid advertisements on blockchain videos, because that's how you get exposed to new things. You find somebody that you like, and if they're all you watch, well, it's likely they're the only place you're going to find out about any new projects. And so I've always said passion to profit. And I feel like exposing people to something, to me, if done what I would perceive as properly, in other words, transparently, I was paid to tell you about this, and I either like it or I don't like it. I'd be weary. I would give it time. I'm generally pretty weary about anything, especially nowadays. But there are a lot of projects out there that I think are pretty good, and they don't really have a way to get the message out to anyone. They can't go through general advertising mediums. And so it really does rely on educators and influencers on YouTube and TikTok and so forth to get the word out about these projects. And I would say the vast majority of these paid projects are likely going to be crap. That's just the nature of things. But we're also still in the infancy of blockchain. And I think we're going to be still for a little while. And until a lot of the regulations enter the space and things really start to level out with more defined clarity as to what is good and what's bad, what's a security and what's not, and so forth and so on, the floodgates are still fairly open. And I know that it's easy to point the finger at anybody that said, oh, you talked about this project and it went belly up, you're terrible. It's easy to do that. But why did you buy it? And even though an influencer tells you about a project, what exactly is it about that project we're supposed to know that you're not able to find out on your own? And yet you still bought into the project. So, oftentimes we're exposed to the same information. The only real difference is maybe we have a little bit more of an educated opinion as to what we think a project may or may be. But that's really about work and experience, right? And so it's about you putting in that work, doing your own research on a project and making your own decision as to whether or not you believe that project is worthwhile. If I see an advertisement for a new cat food in a magazine, I can go and read reviews and I can see, well, a lot of people like this cat food. I could buy it, feed it to my cat, and then my cat's coughing up hairballs for 6 weeks. Who's at fault? Well, I mean, that's just the kind of thing that happens, and it's like, believe nothing, right? I mean, that's ultimately the idea. Believe nothing, formulate your own opinions, but you can't fault those who particularly like a project or don't like a project. There are projects out there that I've not cared for much at all, and it went to the moon. I'm not big on things like Shiba Inu or Dogecoin or a lot of these meme tokens that really, I'm pretty sure 100% of their valuation comes from pure speculation and community-driven pumps. Really? I mean, that's it. What other use cases do a lot of these meme coins have? That's kind of why they're meme coins. And it's like they're these little tokens that are minted in abundance at fractions of a cent, and people buy them and form these communities around them, and ultimately these echo chambers of people saying this is going to the moon. Buy in, buy in, buy in, and the more people that buy in, the higher the price goes. And it's a game of speculation, which is the entirety of crypto right now, because there aren't really any use cases that are sufficient enough to establish a form of mass adoption on a global scale outside of Bitcoin and transferring value to point A to point B. That's it. Everything else is still greatly a test, a model, something new. It's an idea being put into action. Even my own platform, my Soblocks, it's still everything about that. We're building and we're continuing to learn and grow, and we're trying to add functionality and things. And overall, I think my point is, I don't personally think there's anything wrong with doing paid segments, as long as it's transparent and it is noted that it is a paid segment. Now, there's also a difference, and I'm just making all cases here. There is a difference in somebody paying me an abundance of money and then giving me a script and then me reading a script verbatim. Like, this is what we want you to say. I've never done that. I won't do that. I tell everybody, you do not buy my opinion. You buy exposure on my channel. Your project has to merit my opinion if you want it to be favorable. That's all there is to that. And my booking people, you could talk to them. I tell every project and I tell them, you let everybody know that you're always rolling the dice on my channel. If your project does not merit a glowing review, it's likely not getting one. You are not going to buy that. You're buying the time it takes for me to look into your project enough to establish an opinion based on face value at that point. I don't do deep dives into every project I look at because it doesn't really matter. We can dive as deep as we want into what is publicly available on a cryptocurrency project and still never have the full picture. That's all there is to it. Deep dives mean nothing other than a better understanding as to what we perceive to be the reality of the project as it's presented. Nothing more. And nobody has any more power than the CEOs, the founding partners. Here's the thing. If it were possible for influencers to truly evaluate a project to its core and understand whether or not something is a scam before it's a scam, there would be no need for the SEC. Let's just be real about it, because it would be like Minority Report. The SEC would be able to go after all of these scam projects before they were even public, before, at the first sight that, do you get what I'm saying? Like, you have the SEC is made up of geniuses in the finance sector whose sole job is to go after fraud and scams and all kinds of stuff like that. Do you think if it were as easy as one might think for an influencer to say, oh, this is a scam, do you not think that the SEC and other regulatory bodies would already be going after them or stopping them? The difference is that we don't, because we can't, and they don't because they can't. Everything is reactionary. So we can look at a project and say, I don't like the way this looks because it looks kind of similar to this project that went belly up or rug pulled, or I don't like the way this looks because the team looks like, I mean, they went from like, you know, a pet grooming company to suddenly being a blockchain company, and that doesn't sit well with me. I think it's BS. We can do that. But there are a lot of like the big scams out there, the big ones that you know can pull the wool over anyone's eyes, including regulatory bodies. And you know, I mean, look at what's happening in the space right now with FTX, with Celsius, with Three Arrows, with a lot of these companies that have basically just went belly up. And here we are now playing a reactionary game of hindsight is 2020. Right? Where we have all these people, I see all these people, oh, it's SBF. How did nobody know this was a scam? The guy was sitting around doing this and that, playing League of Legends, making $20 million deals. And everybody's like, I love this guy. He's so great. He's such a genius. And it's like, did you need more of a clue? That it wasn't necessarily the most traditional of investment platforms ran by traditional individuals? I mean, you know, hindsight is always 2020, and we all love to point the finger at those who may have pointed us in the direction of something that ended up not going well for anyone. But the reality is, as educators and influencers, all we can do is point people into a direction, and we can say, hey, this project exists. Maybe you want to take a look at it. Oh, I really like this project. Doesn't mean it's good. I always try to do that. And I know that there are others out there that have done the same thing. If you go into crypto expecting 95% of the projects you throw money at to fail, there's no reason for anyone to be upset. Because until we get to a place where the environment is more difficult for all of the bad actors to operate and function and generate capital. I mean, think of how many billionaire investors who have seen it all were scammed by some of these major projects. And yet a YouTuber is supposed to be able to decide what is a scam and what isn't for who. So I think we really need to get to a place where we're a little more realistic in terms of our expectations, because there is nothing stopping any individual on the internet from basically doing the same level of deep dives that any of us on YouTube would do ourselves and come to the same conclusions. And at the same time, opinions vary. You know, I mean, some people can look at somebody like SBF and be like, oh, he's a great guy. He's all about the world and helping people and this and that. And then others will be like, this guy's a total fraud. He's a liar. He's a manipulator, a hacker, or this or that. Everybody has an opinion, but how many of us really know him? And I'm not defending him. I mean, my opinion is not favorable of the man whatsoever. But my point is that we can all look at the same person or the same project and form our own conclusion. And we should. And we should discuss those conclusions in a community, not engage in echo chambers or these virtual bubbles of, you know, well, I'm only going to surround myself in a community that basically regurgitates the same perception of something that I have, such as we see even in Cardano versus Ethereum or Cardano versus Solana. Okay, Cardano won that fight. Obviously, you know, for those of us that have not been favorable to Solana for the longest time and been favorable to Cardano, well, you know, we see where Solana ended up. You know, does that make me necessarily right or smarter or better than somebody that thought Solana was going to go to the moon and take over the world? No, I got lucky that time. Okay. And I willingly admit that, because that is the nature of the crypto space. You win some, you lose some. And, you know, on that note, I would love to address your comments and your questions down below. I'm not even sure if I've made a clear case for what I'm trying to say, quite frankly, because like I said, it's a little difficult to do this in a one-way conversation. I guess all I'm saying is, listen, if it's transparent, if you're watching somebody that discloses the fact that a segment is paid for, and they try to be as transparent and honest in their, you know, their review or their exposure of a particular project, you know, if somebody's paid a good amount of money and, you know, they're glowing reviews through and through, oh, this is going to be the best thing, you know, like I'll give you one final example, Cornucopias. I'm technically a paid ambassador for Cornucopias. I love the project. It doesn't mean it does not mean it can't go belly up someday. It does not mean that it is going to be the end all be all metaverse in all of crypto kind. It doesn't mean that something could happen to one of the lead developers and then it's a chain effect and then now it's gone. No, anything could happen. It also doesn't necessarily mean that if something goes wrong, it's a scam. It also doesn't mean that because I love the project and I went after them to work with them, it doesn't mean that I'm a scammer if something were to happen to the project in the future. I believe that they're doing a great job. They're building everything out. I've talked to them. I engage them. We see a regular streams of developer updates and examples of what they're building and the different games and apps and things. I mean, I am a believer. Doesn't mean that I'm right. What it means is if you follow me and you like what I generally have to say and I expose you to an application or a project, I may like it, I may not. It may be paid, it may be not. If it is paid and I like it, that doesn't mean you run out and buy it. That means maybe it's worth you taking a look and doing a deep dive of your own. My job as I see it is to educate, inform, get some laughs, have a good time, and ultimately show you what is in the cryptoverse. Maybe my opinions on what I think may or may not happen. I'm always right sometimes. My joke. I'm not right all the time. I make mistakes. I make bad calls. I make bad predictions. It's impossible to be accurate with everything you do and say in crypto. If that were the bar, there would be no crypto content in existence. You would just all be on your own. But in the meantime, some of us do prefer trying to make a living from what we spend so many countless hours doing with our lives. And that is ultimately trying to educate ourselves so that we can better arm and educate you for what is happening now and what is likely to happen in the future. But you have to be careful. You never invest more than you can afford to lose in case you or I or anyone else may be wrong. Until next time, crow your coins and I'll see you soon.